Commencing countdown.
3, 2, 1.
This is the Contracting Experience, connecting government contracting professionals to the world around them through conversations with acquisition influencers, insights into evolving hot topics, and sharing lessons learned from the field.
In this episode, we sit down with the Department of the Air Force Digital Transformation Office Chief, Mr. Kyle Hurst. Mr. Hurst talks about the mission of the Digital Transformation Office and why it's so important for the Air Force to automate unnecessary manual processes and transform digitally in order to compete with near-peer adversaries. He also shares what everyday airmen can do to contribute to this immediate challenge facing the Air Force. Welcome, Mr. Kyle Hurst, to the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what is the Digital Transformation Office and what is its mission?
So the Digital Transformation Office is a brand new team, a brand new organization. We're located at the engineering directorate within headquarters AFMC, but we're really a DAF scoped office across the entirety of the acquisition lifecycle. So we have kind of a leadership team that we report to with representatives from both the Air Force Materiel Command, Space Systems Command, and the SAFAQ community. As the Space Service Acquisition Executive stands up, we'll also kind of roll that leadership role into our kind of reporting chain. So DAF-wide, entirety of the acquisition community, really focused on driving this whole digital transformation concept. So, the mission for this office and really for the entirety of digital transformation is to really drive innovation into our weapons system development, accelerate how we develop and deliver our weapon systems, so that those are kind of fluffy words. And so it really breaks down into things like automating some of the manual processes that aren't really necessary. Automate out those pieces of the acquisition process, pieces of certification activities that don't need to be done by a person, right? There's decision points that people have to be in the loop for. Automate out the unnecessary manual labor, making our decisions based on data and models rather than reports or just information, textual information we get from our industry contractors. Make sure that we actually understand from a data-driven perspective why we're making certain acquisition decisions, and then that data and model that we're making decisions on, making sure that we have that we trust those models, that there's some level of authoritativeness that we can actually take to the bank, and we can have confidence in the decisions we're making when we are acquiring these weapon systems, driving things like open architectures, agile software development, some of those kind of principles that we hear to make sure our weapon systems are actually flexible and can adjust as we move forward. And another big one is kind of collaborating, not just amongst ourselves, right? We got to be able to collaborate better across phases of these, right? They're using these complex tools, and a lot of times they got to dumb down the information just to give it to us. And that's wasting both their time and ours. So the digital transformation is kind of trying to get after that, better ways to collaborate across the entire community. And then the last piece I'd say, it's kind of workforce, right? Again, because they have to dumb some of their stuff down. It's not just that we don't have the workforce capable of doing it. We don't have the tools. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have really the culture to do some of that stuff. So our office is going to try to drive some of that culture change, some of that, enabling and empowering the workforce to do that.
All right. Sounds like a big task.
Yeah. Yep. We're making progress though. There's a lot of other teams, a lot of other communities out there that are trying to help us do it. So I think we're in a pretty good spot.
And so why is digital transformation so important?
So I think we could pretty simply say, and a lot of leadership has said, it's if we don't do this, we're going to lose the next kind of high-end fight. So we just had the AFA Aerospace and Cyber Conference, in the DC area, all the big dogs across, Air Force leadership go there, Space Force leadership. The theme this year was definitely China, right? I mean, they've been constantly talking about China's outpacing us in different areas. They're starting to field capability that's getting closer and closer to ours. It makes sense, right? I mean, when you think about coming to the kind of the stuff that we acquire, and it just takes forever. I mean, we have so many weapon systems that are just, it takes decades and decades just to get to that IOC, FOC point. Where it's really comes down to winning that next high-end fight, winning the fight against China, if and when. And it's like a lot of the leadership is not shy about saying that we'll lose that fight if we don't do this. So I kind of thought about another way. We in the Air Force love the OODA loop, right? The way of making decisions and acquisitions no different, right? when we decide what we're going to buy and build, we kind of observe the enemy, right? Figure out what their force is going to look like years from now, make sure that we have a weapon system that can counter it, right? And so then orient ourselves by doing different wargaming analysis or, some kind of force projection and force planning. And then we decide what we're going to do, we do the budgeting activities, we do the requirements generation to decide what we're actually going to build. And then we hit the act, which is acquisition, right? And so actually acquiring those things, the research, development, prototyping, experimenting, all of the stuff that goes into that monster of a bureaucratic process, it just takes decades. So we've got to start figuring out, one of the ways I like to kind of characterize it is we love to invest in the capabilities, but not how we acquire those capabilities. So we've got to start figuring out how we can acquire better. Because it's not going to matter if they can get inside that OODA loop, right? If the adversary can get inside that OODA loop and kind of have to make us reobserve, reorient ourselves before we can even field the capability that we thought we needed to beat them, then they don't even just have the equation to beat us, right? They got the answer, they got the solution to beat us. So that's really what it comes down to from my perspective. Is it's a way to keep our advantage, our technical advantage over the warfighter or over the adversary.
What have you seen the contracting community doing to support digital transformation?
Yeah, so the contracting community has been great. There's been we always get kind of this feedback that digital transformation is engineering only. There's almost a definite misconception out there that it's an engineering only kind of thing. It's not even just changing the contracting way of doing business to make sure that us engineers get the data we need. It's very much the way of doing business is going to change for everybody. So General Holt's actually been a big thought leader in this area. He sent out 10 or so page memo that's out there trying to figure out what exactly it means to his community. And really, I think we're all just trying to figure it out, right? We as a Air Force buy extremely complex weapon systems, but we show up to every day to work and we get on our computer and we all whine about how hard it is to it takes forever to log on, and we have all these IT issues we got to hop through, and I sure hope Teams is going to work today because I got a couple meetings, and it seems like we're always kind of getting in our own way. Acquisition is no different. So we're kind of trying to figure out what exactly it means to each community. So I think the contracting community is definitely out in front of many of the other functional areas, largely because of great leadership like General Holt. I think AFMC is also standing up a digital contracting division at the headquarters staff to kind of help figure out what exactly it means to AFMC, what it means to the acquisition community here. And then we have this digital guide website, and I can get you the link to that, but it kind of starts to lay out some of the information that we have out there. So we've got a lot of good content out there from either programs that have actually started to go do this digital thing, some kind of example contracting language that they've used, some best practices, some template, maybe you could go, things to consider putting in the contract, right? Recommended language kind of stuff. So we've got that on this digital guide. And then we've got a page just dedicated towards contracting. So just that functional community, what's there for them, for contracting to look at. And same thing with FM, engineering, PK, logistics. We got all these pages that are focused towards, here's some information to kind of get you thinking about how it applies to your functional area. And again, it's not every program is going to be different. The contracting, the management, the engineering, it's all different. So the creative thinking, the how do you do it, it's going to look different anywhere you go, but there's some good information out there to kind of get you started.
So how do some of the things that you just mentioned empower the workforce ability to go digital and ultimately impact the warfighter? Yeah,
so like I said, we're all still kind of figuring it out. We know that there's data that we don't have now that we need to go digital. We know that there's things we have to change. We know there's it becomes difficult to wrap your head around when you start thinking of all the things you have to do to acquire a single weapon system, right? Especially if it's something complex like an aircraft, right? You got to go do all this airworthiness stuff, this cybersecurity stuff. If it's a nuclear weapon, you got all kinds of certifications and approvals you got to go through. But even just like the breaking down specific things that are in your job jar, right? An engineer or a PM in a program office, requirements verification kind of stuff. If you're just getting these test reports from a contractor rather than getting the actual data, right? How can we get access to the real data, the real results, the models the contractors are using to verify those requirements? How do we get that to give a level of almost endorse whether we think that's, they meet the requirement or not, right? Figuring out how to kind of break down specific pieces of your job that you can either automate steps or break out, stop doing things that don't make sense, use real data, real models rather. The same with the sustainment center, a lot of our program offices. It's just a matter of kind of extending that to the entirety of all of our acquisition processes. And it's really because, again, going back to that timeline for acquisition, that kind of time-based capability gap that digital is trying to attack. That's what it's all about, right? We got to figure out how to reduce our time. So digital transformation is not about saving money. It's not about saving, manpower billets, being able to do the job with less people. It's strictly about shortening the timeline to deliver capability. So we know there's a lot of things we have to do at an enterprise level to really empower our people to do it. We don't have access to the tools we need in most cases. Most of our IT processes are not easy to work through to get those tools. We don't fund enough of the access to tools, but we're working on all of those things. We don't have the skill sets we need in our workforce, and we're working on that. But there's definitely resources out there through the digital guide, through other programs that are starting to figure it out, and just through the innovation that that's the key advantage we still have, right? If all of our leaders have kind of a sense of optimism about the whole China threat thing, we still out innovate them. We're still more creative. We can still figure these things out faster than they can. So the figuring it out, kind of where it fits within your day job is one of the big messages I like to talk to people about. We had got a video, and it's on the digital guide again, but we got to give a video from General Bunch, kind of just a message to the workforce on what's digital, why are we doing it, why is it important? And that's exactly what his closing comment was. It was, we're not going to succeed by some new office at the headquarters solving all, figuring this out. We're not going to do it by running into just, not being quiet about, hey, I can't do digital because this thing is in my way. And, we can break those things down. We just got to not get, not settle, not get quiet, not get complacent in the bureaucracy of acquisition that we live in. There's a lot of authorities out there. And I think, again, going back to kind of innovative ways of thinking, contracting is one of those communities that there's a lot of legal process, a lot of things you guys have to go through, but you've also got authorities, and there's a lot of contracting officers that understand the different authorities, the rights, the roles they have. I think that's one of the communities that's going to help us figure this out more than most.
What would you most like listeners to take away from this conversation regarding digital transformation?
Yeah, so the big one is that it's the enterprise is not going to figure it out. The headquarters AFMC, staff AQ, whoever replaces Dr. Roper, General Bunch, no one's going to come down and say, hey, this is the solution. We've got the funding for it. This is the answer. Go do it, right? It's anything good that we do is the grassroots, right? It's the people out there figuring out exactly what it means, what it means to them. That's the key takeaway from my perspective is there's don't wait for the enterprise to give you all the answers, right? We're trying to provide some route there, if you will, where individuals might want to go digital, but it's too hard, it's too difficult. They don't really get how or where to do it, or there's just too many inhibitors, right? We've got to figure out how, especially the leaders in each organization and each team, can help break down those barriers, can help enable and empower their kind of team to start going in this direction. And it's going to change the way we do business, right? That's the other thing I like to kind of harp on is we do not need to be just, we're still, even if we're reviewing the kind of capability or, reviewing the stuff that we get delivered by the contractor, we're not going to be, we can't be confident in our answer, in our acceptance of a capability if we don't understand it, right? I mean, there's so much out there that we're getting the, test reports and just information-based, text-based information. And there's no way we have, we got to be we got to be engineers again. We got to be, we got to take some ownership in that process, right? Of acquiring a capability, delivering a capability that we're going to give to the warfighter. We can't just be reviewers of information and hope that, yep, that test report looked good. I guess that meets the requirement. Let's go. We've got to take some ownership in this process. And that's the big thing I hope people come away with is it's not going to be the enterprise that figures it out for you. And it's not going to be easy, but it's going to change how we do business. And it has to, because we are taking longer and longer to field our weapon systems, and that's not an acceptable path forward.
Great. Well, Kyle, I want to thank you again for being on the podcast today and talking about a topic that's really big, but it's also very necessary, and just being encouraging to our listeners that are, everyday airmen that can actually play a part in getting the Air Force success in this digital transformation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm definitely passionate about the subject, and I welcome anyone to reach out, ask me, reach out to me or anybody else to start learning more. Don't hesitate to speak up.
If you have suggestions for topics or people to interview or feedback on the podcast, you can submit those at thecontractingexperience@gmail.com. I want to thank you all for listening to the Contracting Experience podcast. Until next time, keep connecting to the world around you.